the executives of CIGFARO, the executives of SALGA, the executives of the CFO Foundation, our speakers for today, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, the finance professionals, Osngabo. What an honor it is to be standing here before you to come and share a little bit about my story and my journey in my career. When I got the call from my dear friend Ulindelane Skuputu, at first, the very first question I asked him was, how many people are going to be in the room? And he said, estimate about 200. And I was like, 200, I am not going to speak in front of 200 people. And that was a very natural response from me and a default response because naturally I'm an introvert and I keep to myself and like I'm always in my own shell. But he knows the extroverted version of me because that's corporate for you. It will force you to speak up sometimes and have a voice. So for those of you who missed the introduction, my name is Nolwazi Mdunge. I was born and bred in KwaZulu-Natal. My roots are from a small village called Ndwedwe in the outskirts of KwaZulu-Natal. Is there anybody here from Ndwedwe? Oh, shine, Mkaya. Oh, I'm so glad. It's always nice to meet somebody from back home. So I'm the eldest daughter of 4, Gumafungwase, to the late Mr. Mduduzi Benjamin Mdunge, and to my mom, Zanele Mdunge. And I come from a very small-knit family, a prayerful family. My parents actually taught us from a very young age that we need to pray at least 3 times a day. When we wake up, during the day, and also when we come back from school. We used to have like prayer sessions afterwards. And growing up, my parents were very strict. They were really strict to a point that my dad didn't even allow us to go and visit my maternal grandmother and sleep over. So he allowed the day visits, but he didn't allow the sleepovers. And we really enjoyed going to Kagogo because our favorite cousins were there, right? So sometimes we'd try our luck and we'd attempt to ask him, but before we asked him, we always rehearsed and we practiced what we'd say to him before approaching him. And when we eventually did approach him, the first questions he'd ask is whether or not we've washed the bed linens, have we washed the curtains, have we washed the rugs? And this was so bizarre to us because on a normal day, we never had to do that. You know, firstly, because we were so young, and secondly, because mom always had help. But in hindsight, I always say it's the lessons and the values and the principles that my parents instilled in me from a very young age that have brought me where I am today. Okay, so my schooling career started at a school called Bria Primary School. It's in Durban Central CBD. It still exists, so I'm not that old. And from a very young age, throughout my schooling career, I've always been a diligent pupil, a hardworking pupil. And this was first motivated by my parents, in fact. I think it was in the beginning of grade 2 when they sat my sister and I down. My sister was in grade 1 because we're only 11 months apart. They sat us down and they told us, listen, we need you both to be high performers. We need you guys to do very well in school. And as a reward, what we'll do is, for each A that you get, we'll give you 100 rands at the end of the year. Little did they know that Nolwazi Mdunge is going to come back with 8 A's at the end of the year. And this meant they had to... So this meant that they had to give me 800 rands. And 800 rands was quite a lot of money back in 2001. In fact, with 800 rands, I think they were able to buy a month's worth of groceries with a few top-ups here and there. So they obviously didn't give me that 800 rands. But they did give me 200 rands. And I was very excited and I was happy. And I think I went and bought a pair of jeans and a top with that money. So that was a very motivational time for me, and it motivated me to always work hard. But they never spoke about that rule ever again, so there was no more giving 100 rands if you got an A. The following year, I was in grade 3, and I was selected as one of the top performing pupils to join other pupils from other schools within the region to go and meet Mark Shuttleworth. Mark Shuttleworth was a big thing then. I think he had just come back from space. So for me, that was very exciting, and it was actually publicized and published on the Sunday Times newspaper. So when I saw that, I thought I was famous for the longest of times. But it was in that moment where I actually realized that, hey, you know what? There's actually always a reward at the end of hard work. And ever since that day, I've always been consistent and diligent and a hardworking learner, like in primary school, in high school. And that same attitude resulted in me getting 6 distinctions at the end of my matric year. Okay. Yeah. So hard work does pay off. If there's one thing you should take from today is that hard work pays off. You know, it's never in vain, right? So a lot of people ask me how my journey as a chartered accountant started. And the truth is, my parents worked so hard. I come from humble beginnings. We were not a well-off family, but my parents worked really hard to try and give us the best of everything. So they managed to take us to Westville Girls High School, which is still known as one of the top performing schools in KZN. And we were privileged to have the likes of PricewaterhouseCoopers come and speak to us as matriculants and just enlighten us about the CA career. At that time, I had no idea what a chartered accountant was. And when the lady, I remember her name was Fiona, when she was doing her presentation, what struck me the most was the fact that there was an opportunity for an article clerk. So whilst you're going through your CA journey, there was an opportunity in 3rd year for you to be seconded and go overseas. And for me, that was like, wow, you know, because I had always dreamt of going overseas. I had never been overseas before. And to be quite honest, that was the reason why I actually said, okay, I'm going to give this career a chance and see if I'm going to nail it. So KPMG did the same thing the following week, and they came and presented. And they were basically looking for a handful of learners that they were going to award with the bursary. So I went back home and I told my parents about this opportunity. And they were very excited, and they said, okay, if it's what you want to do, go for it, apply for the bursary, and let's see what it gets you. I mean, from a very young age, my parents have always been supportive of my decisions because I think they saw that I was level-headed and strong-headed. So I applied for the bursary. And all along, I had been wanting to apply for medicine, and civil engineering was actually my second option. So upon further research into the civil engineering career, I realized that as a civil engineer, you need to be on site almost every day, wearing PPE, meaning wearing reflector jackets and wearing hard hats and those big boots. And for somebody growing up and being that little girl, I always envisioned myself in these big corporate buildings wearing formal wear. So I've always been a fashionista from a very young age. And when I realized that about the civil engineering career, I said to myself, nope, this is definitely not for me. So I quickly ruled that one out. Okay. So after applying for the bursaries, the 2 bursaries, PwC came back and they said, we've reviewed your application, but we would like to give you a response at the end of the year once you've matriculated and we have your final results. KPMG came back a couple of weeks later and they said, we've reviewed your application and we were very impressed. We would like to award you with a bursary. And I thought, whoa, I didn't know that this kind of thing happened. You know, I was still in my matric year, I hadn't matriculated, and they were already willing to bet on me. So I took that and I went home and I showed my parents, and my parents were very excited as well. because this meant relief for them. They had one less child to worry about, because they still had 3 children to take to school after me. And then it also meant that my tertiary studies would be covered for 3 years and for honors, provided that I met the requirements and I kept the average that they required. And it also meant that I'd have articles at the end of my degree. So this was a pivotal moment for me, and it kept me motivated throughout my tertiary career. Every day I'd wake up and think about that and think that somebody actually took a bet on me and believed that I had the potential to actually qualify as a chartered accountant one day. So how dare I let that person down and miss class or miss a tutoring lesson or skip an exam, bank an exam or bank a test? So I've always carried that attitude with me, and I carried it right through my tertiary studies, and that enabled me to actually pass my degree and my honors in record time. So, okay, thank you, John. So I was tasked to come share a few nuggets on navigating the world of work, and I have followed today's theme, talking on navigating uncertainty throughout your career. And you'll see some of the nuggets that I've shared here in my speech today actually touch a lot on what the keynote speaker spoke about. So what I've learned in the few years that I've been in corporate is that desire for certainty can be a significant obstacle in career transitions. We often crave certainty that we won't fail, that our decisions are sound, and that our efforts will eventually yield results. Yet, it is the very act of moving forward, despite the unknowns, that enable us to discover new insights, identify fresh opportunities, and gather resources for essential reinvention. Each moment, unexpected, devastating, fulfilling, has contributed to the overall growth of my career progression, right? So when I started my career, I was thrown with a whole lot of curveballs. And it is in these moments where I faced these uncertainties that I had to learn how to navigate. And I'd like to share with you how I actually navigated through these uncertain times. Point number 1, when faced with uncertainty, embrace the uncertainty and trust your instincts in making choices, even when the final destination is not clear. So I proceeded to go and work at KPMG. I started my first year of articles. I was very excited to be working my first job and my first salary. It was peanuts, but I was grateful it was my first one. And then I wrote my first board exam. And a couple of months later, the results came back, and I had failed. So this was my very first visible and recordable failure. So all the other failures that I had experienced were unknown to everybody because, it was between myself and the lecturer. It was test. I had never failed an exam. So this was out there because what KPMG did, but they soon learned that the system wasn't working. So they would pull out the results, print the list in a big piece of paper and stick it on the wall at an event. So we'd have like a release of marks event. So everybody knew if you passed or failed. And so that was embarrassing and humiliating. I went back home, I cried. I must have cried for like a week. And I told my parents that actually I don't think this is the career for me. I'd like to explore something different, and I want to apply for a new role or a new job. And my parents were confused because I'd been working so hard, but they didn't say much about it. And I started looking for a new job, and as I was looking for a job, there was a little voice inside of me that came and crept in and said, and was asking me, "What are you doing? Why are you applying for a job when you already have a job? You've been given this opportunity to rewrite your exam, but you want to give up. Do you really want to give up on your CA dream after working so hard? You've literally got 2 more years before you qualify." And I think right there and then, it dawned on me that in actual fact, Whether or not I leave this job, whether or not I quit the CA dream, there were numerous events that were waiting for me, events of failure, because failure is inevitable. You cannot control it. It comes, and it is part of life. So when I realized that, that was actually the first lesson that I learned in my career, that the most beautiful success stories are accompanied by events of failure along the journey. So I was faced with uncertainty when I had failed, but I embraced the uncertainty, and I made a decision and I made a choice to rewrite and try again, even though I didn't know what the outcome would be. So point number 2, in uncertain times, enhance your skills and your knowledge, staying relevant and competitive in the job market. Enhancing your skills and enhancing your knowledge will give you that edge, ubana that thing, because you cream of the crop, you know better than your peers. And it increases your employability as well. And never decline an opportunity to learn. If given an opportunity to learn, grab it with both hands. I remember when I started my first year of articles at KPMG, we were assigned on different clients. So we had public sector clients and we also had private sector clients. So I was assigned on both. But my counterparts actually declined some public sector clients. Firstly, because of preference, they just preferred working with private sector clients. And secondly, because most of the public sector clients were out of town, so which meant that you had to travel or be away from home for a week or sometimes even months. But what they didn't realize is that they were shooting themselves in the foot by declining those engagements. Because fast forward to third year, KPMG UK, the London office, and KPMG USA came knocking on KPMG South Africa looking for workforce. They wanted trainees to second to their offices. And the 2 criteria that they were looking for was, number 1, must be a high performer, and number 2, must have experience in both public sector and private sector. So they were quite disheartened to know that they would not be the first preference or the first choice because they had declined those engagements. So the point that I'm trying to drive home here is that you should never decline the opportunity to learn on unfamiliar grounds because you do not know what that opportunity will bring you, and you do not know the doors that that opportunity will open for you. So some of the tips that I can share with you that have helped me in enhancing my skills is number 1, you must identify the skills that are high in demand within your industry and ensure that you acquire those skills. It could be industry-specific skills, it could be soft skills, and it could also be technical skills. Like, for example, IFRS implements different standards every other year. Make sure that you keep abreast with those standards. Like, for example, in my role at the moment, I don't deal with contracts, but the new IFRS standards that speak to contracts, I ensure that I understand and I ensure that I attend seminars or workshops that teach that standard. So you must also invest in your professional development. So there are online courses that help us with different skills, and there are webinars and workshops and conferences that one can attend where there's knowledge sharing. And you take that knowledge and you bring it back home, you bring it back to your workspace and apply it there. You must stay curious and adaptable. Embrace a growth mindset and stay curious about new developments and opportunities in your field. Point number 3, in uncertain times, build resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from setbacks, and it is a crucial skill for managing your career in uncertain times. Building resilience involves developing mental and emotional toughness to handle challenges and setbacks that you may experience within your profession. In 2018, KPMG had a saga that was all over the news, all over social media, and that posed a reputational damage on the firm, and it had a ripple effect on the employees as well. I remember I was in third year, and I had already known that I didn't want to stay in audit. I knew that I wanted to try and explore opportunities outside of audit. So I was applying for jobs, and I was being called in interviews, and trust me, in every single interview that I went to, they would ask me about my involvement in the fraudulent activities that had taken place. And some companies actually, told me up front that, sorry, we will not be continuing with your application because of the whole debacle that's going on, and we're not sure how much of a risk that you pose to the company. So that was something that I had to be resilient to. Because of all those rejections, it didn't mean that I had to stop applying. I continued applying. And I also had to build resilience in 2021 when I lost my dad. That was a devastating time for me in my life. But, when you lose somebody, sometimes you think that the world will stop and grieve with you, but it doesn't. Life goes on. So you must build resilience in those tough times as well. Okay. Point number 4, in uncertain times, embrace agility and flexibility. When you embrace flexibility, be prepared to pivot and make changes as and when needed. Be open to change, accept that change is inevitable, and be open to it. Be willing to let go of old ways and adapt new ways of learning and working. Be proactive, stay updated on the changes happening in your industry. Stay agile in your job search. So if you're looking for new job opportunities, don't only follow the traditional methods and only look at permanent positions, but also look at contract positions and remote work and freelance work. Embrace remote work. So the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the trend of remote work, and personally, I'm pro remote work because it brings a lot of flexibility, especially if you're a family person. You're able to have that work-life balance, and you also eliminate the time of having to travel to and from work. So, as I conclude, always remember that uncertainty is permanent. And what really defines a true leader is his ability to successfully navigate it. When you are in the moments of uncertainty, it is very important to check in with your values, your aspirations, and to know your why. What social issues are you passionate about, and what work is important to you? Sometimes we see successful individuals and are in awe of how perfectly their careers are. However, upon closer inspection, their paths comprise a series of zigzag moves. They say, life is like the lines on an ECG machine. You know that ECG machine in hospitals that have that up and down lines that actually monitor your heart rate? So that's life. It's up and down. It's got ups and downs. And it shows that you're alive, right? So once it's constant, it means your heart has stopped beating and you're no longer alive. So embrace the ebbs and flows of life. Trusting in the journey's process, despite the uncertainties, opens up new pathways, new opportunities, and takes you closer to your career and dreams. Always remember, each step forward takes you to your unique career trajectory, paving the way to the realization of your dreams. And how wonderful it is to wake up one day and be a tangible representation of a dream realized. Sometimes the events that give rise to uncertainty will leave you confused, and they will leave you questioning why certain events are happening in your life. And they'll leave you questioning God and asking God, this was not the plan. Why is it happening the way it is? But Steve Jobs once said, you cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. So you have to trust that somehow the dots will connect in the future. Thank you.